Hello, welcome to another episode of Science Talks, a conversation hosted by the University of Arizona's BIO5 Institute. My name is Amy Randall Barber. The BIO5 Institute is home to hundreds of researchers and students, as well as many administrative staff who help support the cross-disciplinary research conducted here. Today we are joined by Dr. Holly Andrews, who is currently working with both the Barron-Gafford Research Group and the Meredith Ecosystem Genomics Lab at the University of Arizona. She got her PhD from the University of California, Riverside. In 2021, she was awarded a National Science Foundation Fellowship in the University of Arizona's School of Natural Resources and Environment, where she worked with the Meredith Lab. And she received a BIO5 Institute Postdoctoral Fellowship in 2023 to expand some of that research. In August 2023, she started a joint postdoc position across the Meredith and Barron-Gafford labs. Thank you so much for joining us, Holly.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk.
So before we get started, I like to ask a couple of fun icebreaker questions, rapid fire style, not related to research, just something fun. So can you give us a 4-letter word, not a 5-letter word, that starts with the letter B?
Okay, so my original response to this was going to be bear, as in bear down, go University of Arizona. Nice. I actually, since I got these questions ahead of time, was chatting with some of my friends, and they were like, obviously the 4-letter word you're supposed to say is BIO5, and I was like, but 5 is a number, so I'm going with bear for bear down.
Both solid answers. They're solid answers.
Yeah.
All right, our next question. What is your favorite Catalyst Cafe order? For those who don't know, the Catalyst Cafe is our resident BIO5 cafe that many gather in and order from, hang out there, and they offer lots of different food and beverage options. I personally recommend the prickly pear lemonade. What is your favorite go-to?
I also really like the prickly pear lemonade and just all of their lemonade and tea combinations. I believe they also have like a passion fruit tea that's really good too. So yeah, highly recommend those.
Awesome. I was just told today to try the pomegranate lemonade.
Ooh, okay.
I didn't know that was an option, so now I'm going to have to go try it.
Yeah, same.
Right? So you graduated from UC Riverside with your PhD. Are you a native Californian, or where are you from?
Yeah, I actually grew up in central Ohio near the Columbus metropolitan region. So I'm very much from the Midwest. I did my bachelor's degree in Southwestern Ohio at Miami University, and then did a master's at the University of Michigan. So after experiencing the cold winters in Michigan, I was like, I need to get out of here, go to the Southwest. And so that's when I moved to California to start my PhD. And have not wanted to leave, clearly, because now I'm in Tucson.
Yeah, so,
and really loving it. So,
okay, that's awesome. It's a little hot here compared to California, but I was going to ask you, what brought you to the University of Arizona?
I want to say first or second year of PhD in California, I started learning about, so my background is in ecology. I'm really interested in ecosystem science. And there are just so many facilities on this campus, like Biosphere 2, for example, or just a lot of other ecosystem facilities around Tucson's campus. So from very early on in my PhD, I decided I wanted to come here next for a postdoc. And so that's what actually led me to write this NSF postdoctoral proposal with Laura Meredith, and was lucky enough to receive that funding and come here. And I've wanted to come here for a while, and now I'm finally here, and it's been great.
That's great. So I've always been curious about this process. So you didn't know Laura ahead of time. You kind of found out about her in doing your research to figure out kind of what lab maybe you'd want to work with. Is that right? Or?
Right. So my PhD research is sort of looking at gaseous emissions from soils, which is what her lab specializes in. And one of my mentors early on in my PhD was also Rachel Gallery, who is another faculty member in SNRE. And she suggested that Laura would be a great person to write this proposal with, because I wanted to add some new skills into my sort of my toolbox of sort of research skills. And so I actually ended up cold emailing Laura and saying, hey, I have this topic I'm interested in. Would you like to write this proposal together? And she said yes, because I mean, yeah, that's free money for both of us. So why not? And yeah, it ended up being a great collaboration, writing the proposal together, and then just working with her has been great since. And I've definitely picked up a ton of new skills, which I will carry forward into my career. So
that's awesome. And there is like a whole little culture here for the ecosystem group, isn't there?
Yeah,
I have several different researchers that kind of all work together and separately. And Laura's awesome. She's worked with us many, many times, and she's wonderful.
Yeah.
What first introduced you to the idea to be a researcher? Was like, what was your aha moment in your life?
Oh man, great question. I feel like I kind of just stumbled into it. I've always been interested in sort of wildlife biology from an early age. My parents are kind of outdoorsy people, especially my dad. And so they got me involved in a lot of local like metro parks, like Parks and Rec types of kid volunteer activities. And so from there, I just like really liked being outside and learning about nature. I was also very much into music. And so for a while that was, I was trying to decide which career I wanted to take, and ultimately landed on biology as a place to go. And then, you know, my freshman year of college, I just, randomly ran into a faculty member who was looking for undergrads to work in his lab. And I was like, okay, that sounds like something nice to do, nice to have on a resume. And from there, just kind of kept going. I don't know, things sort of snowballed from there. I guess my aha moment would be, so when I was in my junior year of my undergraduate degree, I applied for a fellowship with the EPA because I was also very interested in government research, environmental protection, and was lucky enough. It's a program that actually got cut in recent years from the EPA budget. So it's a program that doesn't exist anymore, but it was essentially a way to get undergrads involved in research through government labs and government agencies. And so I was able to do an internship program with one of the ecology divisions on the East Coast in Rhode Island, working in wetlands, weirdly enough. It was just like a great experience being able to, they really pushed for me to sort of design my own experiment and actually collect the data, go through the whole process myself, with help from my mentors, of course. And then I actually was included on a couple of publications that came out of that work. And so I think it was at that moment where I was like, oh, I can do this.
Yeah.
Like, I have actually gone through the whole process. I felt really valued as a contributor to that science, even though I was still at the undergraduate level. And I just feel like from there, I saw research as a potential career, and it was really fun to do those experiments and just learn more about what's going on in terms of wetland degradation. We were looking at how wetlands along the East Coast are being degraded by climate change, as well as like urbanization and runoff is causing a lot of wetlands to sort of lose their resilience and their ability to counteract hurricanes and other extreme weather events. And so it was just a great, I guess, learning experience to be able to contribute new data, new knowledge to this important topic of how are we going to make sure our ecosystems continue to be sustainable in the face of a lot of land changes over time and climate change. So, yeah.
That's really cool. That's super interesting.
Yeah. Long-winded answer, but yeah.
Thank you. So you had 2 fellowships at the same time for approximately 8 months or so. They overlapped. So were the projects for each of the fellowships the same, or were they different?
They were related, but sort of tackling two sides of maybe this same research question or a similar research question. So my NSF fellowship is really trying to tackle, so this is in agricultural systems now, we're going to move to a different ecosystem, to think about nitrogen cycling in the soil. And when we are adding fertilizers onto agricultural fields, where does that fertilizer actually go? We know that actually a small fraction of it ends up in the plants, which is why we're adding the fertilizer, is to help the plants grow. But actually it's not all getting there. Where does it go instead? We know that a lot of it is lost to the atmosphere as greenhouse gases. Actually, the number one source of nitrous oxide, which is a really potent greenhouse gas into the atmosphere, is from agricultural soils. Oh, wow. And that's produced by microbes in the soil, microbial communities. Certain types of microbes produce that gas. And so I really wanted to understand how that process is happening, and can, I don't want to say can we engineer our soils, but can my research sort of inform how we use soils and use fertilizer in our agricultural systems to make it more climate friendly, and actually make sure that what farmers are spending money on when they buy fertilizer is actually getting to the plants, which is where they want it to go.
Right. Yeah.
So from my NSF fellowship side, I was really trying to actually do some stable isotope analyses. We injected isotopically labeled fertilizer into the soil to actually track that process in the field. And then with my, and to see, where does that fertilizer go? Is it incorporated into microbial biomass, so into their DNA itself? How much of it is actually released as these gases? How much of it is getting into plants? And how are plants using it once they acquire it? So that was sort of that aspect of it. And then my BIO5 fellowship is building off of that by instead looking at how, once the nitrogen gases are formed, how they actually move into, through the soil and leave the soil to go into the atmosphere, which, without getting too far into the weeds of the nitrogen cycle, which can be complicated to talk about, essentially there are different ways that these gases can diffuse through the soil, and sometimes microbes also can eat these gases and use them for their own metabolism. And so we're trying to track, how much of this gas are microbes producing? How much are they consuming? How fast is it moving through the soil? How does that relate with water? Because we're also irrigating soils, and if you're adding water to a soil, it can slow down the diffusion of those gases or the movement of those gases through the soil. So trying to really tease apart, I guess, the physics of the soil system rather than the biology and some of the other mechanics of these agricultural soils. So in a way, these are both related to thinking about nitrogen metabolism in agriculture and fertilizer use, but from two kind of different methodological approaches.
Yeah.
And sort of types of data that we're trying to connect here. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's really cool. And I have to ask this question. So you said you're from the Midwest area.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of farming there. Yes. And all of that. And so and you stumbled into this. So is there a relation at all? Do you have a family in agriculture that sort of led you down this path, or curiosity? Where did your curiosity for this come from?
Yeah, it's so funny that you asked this question, because I really did not. I was very anti-agriculture research when I first was thinking about a research direction. I really enjoyed working in wildlands. I guess I should have mentioned another reason I moved to the Southwest for my PhD is I really wanted to work in desert systems specifically. So a lot of my PhD work is in desert systems. I wanted to get out of the pseudo-forested Midwest / agricultural systems of the Midwest to come out to the desert. But I am just... I keep finding myself working in agriculture because it's really a problem that I think is important to address in sort of as we're thinking about society in the future and how are we going to feed everyone and how do we also feed everyone in a climate sustainable way that we're not just like making things worse in the future climatically, which might make it even harder to feed everyone. You know, there's all these interacting sort of societal, but also wildlands adjacent or like similar ecosystem questions that you can ask in this system. And so I find myself I keep coming back to agriculture as a way to move forward and to ask some of these research questions. And yeah, so I would say originally, being from the Midwest, I don't have a ton of ties to agriculture, and I did not see myself doing research in this area, but there's just so many questions to ask in this system. And and agriculture also, I think, well, what I'm finding is it's way more complicated than we think it is, even from an ecological perspective. Most people tend to think of agricultural systems as very simplified ecosystems. We're growing all these like one type of crop in one field area. So like maybe it's a very simple system and there's not a ton of interesting questions to ask. But what we're finding is actually these soils are super complex and like it's really hard to tease apart what's going on in these soils, even though we might think that it's a simple question.
Thank you for that answer. I'm sure that those 8 months were very busy trying to keep up with both projects and both labs and all of that. But the NSF fellowship has now ended, and so now you just have the one fellowship that you're working on now. Do you see yourself staying at the University of Arizona?
I would love to stay here. Yeah. I've been trying to find something more permanent. But yeah, as was mentioned at the beginning, I have now started a new postdoc position, which is sort of splitting across these two labs, which I guess I should also mention the Barron-Gafford lab position that I'm just now starting is actually also in agriculture and really focusing on this question of agrivoltaics, which is mixing solar panels and solar energy with agricultural cropping systems, or I guess different types of agricultural systems. You could think of it as livestock grazing or some other types of agriculture as well. But this idea that we're sort of bringing together our energy and our food in the same land area. And there was a recent, I think, report that was sent out across the university about sustainable agriculture into the future. Mm-hmm. And agrivoltaics was mentioned as one of those possibilities. And we still, this is very new research, which is also very exciting that we can, ask similar questions that we've asked in other agricultural systems, but it might become a totally different answer. Like one thing that works well in traditional ag might not work as well in this sort of agrivoltaic system. And we might need to think about optimizing the efficiency of that system for being more sustainable. But at the same time, we're using less land area to get multiple types of outputs that are useful for society. And so, I'm just really excited to move forward and combine my previous work in the Meredith lab and sort of finishing up some of those projects with her and starting to sort of apply those same ideas in this agrivoltaic setting in the Barron-Gafford lab. So so it's been, it's kind of nice to have this split position, which focuses on one common study site, but asking very different questions at very different scales as well. In the Meredith lab, I've been focusing at these really tiny spatial scales and sort of looking at what's going on like immediately next to the plant in the soil. And in the Barron-Gafford lab, we're sort of zooming out and thinking about these field level effects of agrivoltaics on larger spatial scales. So,
Oh, that's okay. I have a question. I am ignorant. What does voltaic mean?
Voltaics is just a shorthand for anything that produces, I guess, voltage, which in this case would be like the solar panels.
Oh, that makes sense with the solar panels.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the agrivoltaics word is like, if you split it apart, there's the agri part, which is the agriculture part, and the voltaics part, which is the solar panels part. And sort of this was sort of a word that was generated from this idea that we're putting both of these in the same parcel of land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for explaining that.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
No worries.
Can you tell us what your current overall personal research goal is? Like, where do you want to see yourself in your research?
Yeah, great question. I am interested definitely in continuing research as part of my eventual, I guess, more permanent career. But I've been interested in research for a really long time, and I want to keep doing that as part of my career. I also want to be able to combine research with some kind of educational perspective. So when I talk about this, I say, like, I either want to be in a traditional educational setting, like at an academic institution, or in a government setting that has like a substantial outreach program associated with it. I think public education, or for the broader public, like outside of academic institutions, is equally as important and connects well with some of these broader policies that we're trying to change, or just these broader thinking about sustainable systems. I guess it's important to that everybody is on the same page about how we can potentially move forward, or opportunities that we can take advantage of to move forward.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you. I have two more questions. So this one is kind of like a no-brainer, but we like to ask it anyway. Have you had any influential mentors in your life, personally, educationally speaking? I'm sure you have, but do you have one or two that you'd like to talk about or give props to?
Yeah, I mean, all of my academic advisors across undergrad and grad school. I guess if I'm calling out specific names, I'll go with probably my first mentor that I had in the direction of research. So I guess we'll go with an educational mentor, which was Beth Watson. She, at the time, was the postdoc that was involved in the project that I was working on with my EPA fellowship and internship in Rhode Island. She was just super great and just super inclusive. She was the one who put me as a co-author on all her papers.
Oh, that's great.
And so I just really felt valued as a researcher by working with her. And in connection with my sort of aha moment of like, oh, I can do this. I can do research for a career. I think she was the one that really started that process pretty early on in college. She has now moved on. She's now a faculty at Drexel University in Pennsylvania. And we still keep in touch quite a bit, especially for a tiny second in my PhD, I was doing some remote sensing work with drones and like flying drones over different ecosystem types to look at different aspects of the vegetation in those systems. And she was also doing the same thing in Pennsylvania. And so we would email back and forth a little bit and sort of talk about that, which was a completely different set of research from what we did together in Rhode Island. But it's been great to keep in touch with her. Yeah. And she's just been super supportive of me my whole research career, which has been really awesome. And yeah, I really, I guess, needed that. Going through college, it was just nice to see like having, I guess, women mentors in STEM has been really important for seeing myself in potential careers.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. I think, I'll stick with her.
Okay. So what's next for you? We kind of talked a little bit about if you'd like to stick around, maybe at University of Arizona or go into more government-related type positions. Is there anything else you'd like to share about future aspirations?
Oh, great question. So immediately next, I've just started this new postdoc position, so I'm going to be sticking around at UA for at least another year. Potentially longer, hopefully longer. Would love to stay here longer. What is next in terms of, I think I'm just trying to find something permanent at this point.
Yeah.
And, have been, exploring options in the sort of institutional, like educational academic sector, as well as the government academic sort of research positions, especially with the USDA and USGS and sort of these more environmentally and agriculturally focused agencies. So I think at this point it's just trying to find where I'm going to land.
Yeah, okay.
And just continuing to do research on agriculture and thinking more about, combining, energy and food and our natural ecosystems and thinking about, ecosystem sustainability in the long term.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I just have a feeling that one of these days we're going to see your name on something really awesome that you've discovered that will help the future.
I hope so.
Help us humans on this planet.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, heck yeah. I think we will. Well, thank you again for joining us today. It was really a pleasure to talk to you and get to know you and in your research.
Thanks to our listeners for tuning in to another episode of Science Talks. Continue the conversation with us next time as we learn more about the amazing science happening at the University of Arizona's BIO5 Institute.